No one wanted the alien girl until a human made her family. Transfer file 3782 appeared on Nathan Wells' terminal with a soft ping. Another day, another bureaucratic error to fix at Outpost Helios 7. As lead systems engineer, he'd grown accustomed to cleaning up administrative messes in this remote corner of the Andromeda sector. Biological asset transfer, he muttered, frowning at the screen. The file contained minimal information, just an ID code, transport details, and a destination that didn't exist on the station. Attached was a partial holographic rendering that made Nathan's breath catch. Violet skin like twilight silver hair that seemed to float around delicate shoulders and eyes, startlingly blue, that held something he recognized immediately. Loneliness. Nathan had seen that same expression in his mirror for the 3 years since he'd volunteered for this assignment after losing his wife in the Proxima disaster. He knew loneliness intimately. Computer locate subject TR3782, he said, curiosity piqued. Subject is in holding bay 12, awaiting transfer verification, the AI responded. Nathan shouldn't have gone personally. He could have assigned the task to any junior tech, but something about those eyes pulled him toward the lower decks, where temporary visitors waited before continuing their journeys across the galaxy. Holding Bay 12 was stark and utilitarian. A transparent barrier separated the small waiting area from the corridor, and there she was sitting perfectly still on a bench, hands folded in her lap. Up close, her violet skin had subtle iridescent patterns that shifted with her breathing. Her silver hair was pulled back severely, revealing elegant pointed ears. She wore only standard-issue white garments that resembled underclothes more than proper attire. She looked up when Nathan approached, and those blue eyes widened slightly. "Hello," Nathan said, suddenly feeling awkward. "I'm Engineer Wells. There seems to be a mistake with your transfer." "There is no mistake," she said, her voice melodic but flat. "I am being returned." "Returned to where?" "To the Genetics Corporation. I am a failed prototype." Nathan blinked, looking down at the file again. "You're a synthetic." A small, bitter smile touched her lips. "Not synthetic, engineered, genetically modified from base Elysian DNA with human emotional capacity. The experiment was deemed unsuccessful." Nathan's stomach tightened. "You're a person, not an experiment." "The consortium disagrees," she said simply. Nathan studied her file more carefully. Between the technical jargon, a story emerged. Created as a potential diplomatic bridge between humans and the emotionally reserved Elysian species, she had been modified to experience and express human-like emotions. But the Elysians found her excessive emotional responses disturbing, and each foster placement had ended with her return. After 12 attempts, the project was being terminated. "What's your name?" Nathan asked. She hesitated. "My designation is TR3782. "That's not a name," Nathan said gently. "What do you call yourself?" Something flickered in those blue eyes, hope, perhaps. "The scientist who created me called me Lyra after a constellation visible from Earth." "Lyra," Nathan repeated, liking the way it felt. "Well, Lyra, there's been a routing error. Helios 7 isn't equipped for biological transfers." "I understand. I will wait for the next transport." Nathan made a decision then, impulsive, unprofessional, and probably against 17 different regulations. "Actually," he said, overriding the security lock on the barrier, "while we sort this out, you'll need proper quarters, and clothes, and a tour of the station." When the barrier slid open, Lyra stood uncertainly. "Why would you help me?" she asked, confusion evident in her voice. Nathan offered a small smile, "Because everyone deserves to be seen as more than their file." As Lyra took her first step out of the holding bay, the overhead lights caught in her silver hair, creating a momentary halo effect. And Nathan felt something long dormant stir within him, a desire to protect, to care. To see her smile, Is this all for me? Lyra stood in the doorway of the guest quarters, her blue eyes wide with wonder. Nathan scratched the back of his neck, suddenly self-conscious about the modest space. It's not much, just standard visitor accommodations, but it's private. Lyra moved slowly into the room, trailing her fingers over surfaces as if afraid they might disappear. The quarters were simple, a bed, a small sitting area, a private hygiene unit, but to someone who had spent her life in sterile holding facilities and laboratories, it might as well have been a palace. I've never had my own space before, she whispered, turning to face him. Thank you, Nathan. Hearing his name in her melodic voice sent an unexpected warmth through him. I've arranged for some clothing options. They'll be delivered soon. And I've told the station AI to grant you level 2 access. That means you can use the common areas, the gardens, the observation deck. I'm allowed to move freely. The concept seemed foreign to her. Of course, you're not a prisoner here, Lyra. Her silver hair shimmered as she tilted her head. What am I then? The question caught Nathan off guard. According to her file, she was technically property of the Genetics Corporation. But looking at her, the intelligence in her eyes, the dignity in her posture despite everything, he couldn't bring himself to say those words. You're my guest, he said finally, for as long as you want to be. Over the next several days, Nathan found excuses to show Lyra around the station between his shifts. He told himself it was professional courtesy, but the truth was simpler. He enjoyed her company. Her perspective made him see the station, his home for 3 lonely years, with fresh eyes. In the hydroponics bay, Lyra gasped at the riot of colors and scents from plants gathered across the galaxy. I've never seen so many living things in one place, she said, gently touching a blue-petaled flower that seemed to lean toward her violet fingers. That's a Terran lily, Nathan explained. They respond to touch and body heat. Lyra pulled her hand back, alarmed. Did I hurt it? No, he laughed softly. It likes you. Her smile then, hesitant but genuine, made something in Nathan's chest constrict. At the observation deck, Lyra stood transfixed before the vast panorama of stars. I've only seen space through view screens, she confessed. It's overwhelming. In a good way, Nathan asked, standing beside her. Yes, her voice was barely audible. It makes me feel small but not insignificant. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. He found himself studying her profile instead of the stars, the graceful curve of her neck, the way her silver lashes caught the light. Chief Medical Officer Talia Reeves was less enchanted when Nathan brought Lyra for a standard checkup. You're telling me she's a genetically engineered hybrid with unstable emotional patterns, and you've given her station access? Talia hissed, pulling Nathan aside while Lyra sat patiently on the examination table. Her emotional patterns aren't unstable, Nathan defended. She's just more expressive than her creators intended. And that's why they're scrapping the project, Talia raised an eyebrow. They're wrong about her, Nathan insisted. She's not dangerous, Talia, she's just different. After examining Lyra, even the skeptical doctor seemed impressed. Your biological markers are fascinating, she told Lyra. Your creators did remarkable work even if they don't appreciate it. They wanted me to be perfect, Lyra said quietly. Nobody's perfect, honey, Talia replied, her professional demeanor softening slightly. That's what makes life interesting. As they left medical, Nathan noticed Lyra walking taller, as if some invisible burden had lightened. That evening, they shared a meal in the station's mess hall. Lyra approached each new food with methodical curiosity, her expressions of delight or surprise drawing smiles from nearby crew members. Everyone is staring at me, she whispered, self-consciously touching her violet skin. Because you're beautiful, Nathan said without thinking, then immediately felt heat rise to his face. I mean you're different and people are curious, that's all. But when their eyes met across the table, something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of two souls adrift, perhaps finding anchor in each other. Later, walking her back to her quarters, Nathan found himself telling Lyra about his wife, about the Proxima disaster, things he hadn't spoken of in years. "You still miss her," Lyra observed gently. "Every day," Nathan admitted. "But tonight is the first time that thought didn't hurt quite so much." Outside her door, Lyra hesitated. "Nathan, what happens when they realize I'm here?" The question had been haunting him too. Eventually, Genetics would discover their asset had been diverted. "We'll figure it out," he promised, "together." As her door closed between them, Nathan realized with startling clarity that he would fight to keep that promise, not just for her sake, but for his own. Absolutely not. Administrator Voron's amphibian features contorted in what passed for a frown among the Aquilarian species. Helios 7 is a scientific outpost, not a refugee center for corporate cast-offs. Nathan stood his ground in the administrator's office, trying to maintain professional composure. "Sir, Lyra has been here for 3 weeks without incident. She's even been helping Dr. Reeves catalog biological samples." "Engineer Wells," Voron interrupted, his bulbous eyes blinking rapidly, "I've received an official inquiry from Genetics Corporation regarding their misplaced asset. They want it returned immediately." "Her," Nathan corrected sharply, "not it." Voron leaned back in his chair, regarding Nathan with sudden interest. "You've grown attached to this experiment." "Well, she's a person, sir, intelligent, compassionate, and designed to elicit exactly those protective responses from humans," Voron countered. "That was the entire point of her creation." Nathan's hands clenched at his sides. "With all due respect, sir, sending her back would be sentencing her to termination." "That is not our concern." Voron's tone was final. "Prepare the subject for transport. The retrieval vessel arrives tomorrow." Nathan left the administrator's office with his mind racing. He found Lyra in the hydroponics bay, carefully pollinating Terran orchids alongside botanist Juno Quan. "You've got a natural touch," Juno was saying. "These orchids are notoriously temperamental, but they seem to respond to you." Lyra's smile faded when she saw Nathan's expression. "What's wrong?" He couldn't lie to her. "Genetics knows you're here, they're sending a ship." The brush in Lyra's hand clattered to the floor. Juno discreetly excused herself, leaving them alone among the flowering plants. When Lyra asked, her voice remarkably steady despite the fear evident in her eyes. "Tomorrow," Nathan stepped closer, "but I'm not letting them take you." "You can't stop a corporation like Genetics. They have legal ownership." "Legal ownership of a person," Nathan's voice rose. "That's not right and you know it." Lyra's shoulders slumped. "What I know doesn't matter. This was always temporary, Nathan. I was foolish to pretend otherwise." "No," he took her hands, violet fingers intertwining with his tan ones. "Listen to me, there are options. The Humanitarian Coalition has been challenging these kinds of ownership claims. We could file for asylum or I could go willingly," she said quietly. Nathan stared at her in disbelief. "You'd give up after everything." Her blue eyes flashed with sudden fire. "I'm trying to protect you. Do you think they'll just let you interfere with their property without consequences? Your career, your life here." "Doesn't matter," he cut in. "Not if it means watching them take you away." The intensity of his words hung between them. Lyra's expression softened, and she reached up to touch his face, the first time she had initiated such contact. "No one has ever fought for me before," she whispered. Nathan covered her hand with his own. "Then it's about time someone did." That evening, they developed a plan. While Nathan consulted with Talia about legal precedents for engineered beings, Lyra made her own preparations. When several crew members who had come to know her learned of her situation, they offered support, some out of kindness, others out of growing respect for her abilities. At 600 the next morning, the genetics retrieval vessel docked at Helios 7. Two corporate security officers in sleek uniforms marched onto the station, accompanied by a thin scientist with cybernetic enhancements visible at his temples. Dr. Visek, Lyra acknowledged when they entered the conference room where she waited with Nathan and Administrator Voren. TR-3782, the scientist replied coldly. You've caused considerable inconvenience. Her name is Lyra, Nathan said through gritted teeth. Dr. Visek ignored him. Administrator, we appreciate your cooperation in this matter. The transport authorization. Before Voren could respond, Lyra stood. I wish to make a formal request for independent status under Coalition Statute 47B regarding sentient engineered beings. The room fell silent. Dr. Visek's cybernetic implants flashed red. That statute doesn't apply to you, he said dismissively. You were created as property. Actually, came Talia's voice as she entered with a data pad, recent precedent suggests otherwise. The Janarius ruling established that cognitive autonomy constitutes grounds for personhood regardless of origin. As legal arguments erupted around her, Lyra caught Nathan's eye across the table and mouthed two words that made his heart soar. Thank you. Whatever happened next, she would no longer face it alone. The station's emergency klaxons cut through the recycled air at 3:47, jolting Nathan from a fitful sleep. Red warning lights pulsed against the walls of his quarters as the AI's voice echoed through the intercom. Critical failure in the atmospheric regulation system. All personnel report to emergency stations. Nathan was halfway into his uniform when his personal communicator chirped. It was Talia. Get to level 3 immediately, it's Lyra. His heart plummeted. Since the standoff with Genetics 2 weeks ago, Lyra had been granted temporary protected status pending a coalition hearing. Dr. Visek and his security team remained on the station, monitoring her every move, waiting for any misstep that could invalidate her claim to personhood. Nathan found her in the main engineering hub, surrounded by frantically working technicians. Administrator Voren stood nearby, his amphibian features contorted with worry. Dr. Visek watched from the corner, a calculating gleam in his cybernetic eyes. What's happening? Nathan demanded. Chief Engineer Damon Powell looked up from his console, face grim. Cascade failure in the atmospheric processors. Oxygen levels are dropping throughout the station. And she claims she can fix it, Voren added, gesturing at Lyra, who stood before a holographic display of the station's systems, her fingers moving rapidly through the interface. I don't just claim it, Lyra replied without looking up. I know I can. Nathan moved to her side. Lyra, what? The Elysian part of my genetic makeup includes eidetic pattern recognition, she explained quickly, her eyes never leaving the complex diagram. I've been studying the station schematics in my free time. There's a solution, but we have to work fast. Dr. Visek stepped forward. Administrator, I must protest, allowing an unstable prototype to interfere with critical systems. We have 19 minutes before oxygen levels become critical, Lyra interrupted. You can remove me afterward if you wish, but right now, I need access to the central processing core. Voren hesitated, then nodded sharply. Do it. What followed was a blur of activity. Under Lyra's direction, Nathan and Powell rerouted emergency power while she reprogrammed the atmospheric sequencers. Her violet fingers moved with inhuman speed across the interfaces, her silver hair falling from its neat arrangement as she worked feverishly. The oxidation inhibitors are cascading, Powell warned as warning lights multiplied across the display. I see it, Lyra responded, her voice eerily calm. Nathan, on my mark, I need you to manually override Junction 47. Their eyes met briefly. In that moment, something unspoken passed between them, trust, perhaps, or something deeper. Ready, he confirmed. When the moment came, they moved in perfect synchrony, their actions complementing each other as if they'd worked together for years. Around them, the crisis response team fell silent, watching in awe as the flashing red alerts gradually shifted to yellow, then green. Atmospheric systems stabilizing, the AI announced. Emergency condition downgraded. The collective exhale of relief was palpable. Powell clapped Nathan on the shoulder. How the hell did she know how to do that? Before Nathan could respond, Voren approached Lyra, studying her with new eyes. That was impressive. You've just saved everyone on this station. Lyra straightened, dignity in every line of her body despite her disheveled appearance. I was designed to build bridges between species, administrator. That includes understanding your technology. Dr. Visek pushed forward. This changes nothing. One emergency response doesn't negate. It negates your claim that she's unstable or dangerous, Talia cut in, having witnessed the entire event. In fact, I'd say it strengthens her case considerably. Later, when the crisis had fully passed and the station had returned to normal operations, Nathan found Lyra on the observation deck, gazing out at the stars. You were amazing today, he said, coming to stand beside her. I only did what was necessary, she replied softly. That's not true, he turned to face her. You could have let the system fail, it would have forced an evacuation, you might have escaped genetics in the chaos. A small smile touched her lips, and left everyone in danger. That's not who I am, Nathan. I know, his voice was rough with emotion. That's why he stopped, suddenly uncertain. Lyra's blue eyes searched his face. Why you what? Instead of answering with words, Nathan reached out, gently brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. The simple touch held a universe of meaning. This is uncharted territory, he whispered, for both of us. Yes, she agreed, leaning slightly into his touch. But perhaps that's where the most important discoveries are made. When their lips finally met, it felt like coming home to a place neither had known existed. Violet skin against tan, silver hair threaded through human fingers, two beings from different worlds finding connection in the vastness of space. Behind them, unnoticed, Dr. Visek watched from the shadows, his expression unreadable as he made a decisive entry in his data pad. The Coalition hearing chamber hummed with tense energy. Representatives from 7 species sat in elevated positions around the circular room, their attention focused on the small group at the center. Lyra, standing tall in the formal blue uniform Nathan had helped her select. Nathan himself, trying to project calm confidence despite his racing heart, and opposite them, the genetics delegation led by Dr. Visek. 3 months had passed since the atmospheric crisis on Helios 7. 3 months of building a case, gathering testimonials, and preparing for this moment, while also navigating the delicate, wonderful territory of their deepening relationship. The Coalition recognizes Case File 8291E regarding the status of the engineered being designated TR-3782, also called Lyra, announced the Terran representative, a stern-faced woman named Director Okafor. This hearing will determine whether the subject qualifies for personhood under Interspecies Statute 47B. Dr. Visek rose first, his cybernetic implants glinting under the chamber lights. Honored representatives, this case is quite simple. The entity before you represents billions in research and proprietary genetic engineering. It was created for a specific purpose which it failed to fulfill. Genetics Corporation has legal ownership rights that must be respected. Nathan squeezed Lyra's hand gently as they listened to Visek methodically reduce her entire existence to a failed investment. When their turn came, Talia presented the medical evidence of Lyra's unique consciousness, while Administrator Voren, in a surprising turn, testified to her crucial role during the station crisis. Finally, it was Lyra's turn to speak. She moved to the center of the chamber, violet skin luminous under the lights, silver hair arranged in a simple, elegant style that emphasized her face. Nathan had never seen her look more beautiful or more determined. "I stand before you as a paradox," she began, her melodic voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "Created to be perfect yet deemed a failure, designed to bridge worlds yet rejected by both. I have been called property, experiment, and asset, but through the kindness of others I discovered what I truly am." She paused, her gaze sweeping the chamber before settling briefly, warmly on Nathan. "I am a person, my thoughts are my own. My feelings, those excessive emotional responses cited in my termination file are real and valid. I dream, I hope, I love." Her voice caught slightly on the last word. "These qualities were meant to be controlled functions, but they have become the core of who I am." The chamber was utterly silent as she continued. "I did not ask to be created, but I ask now to live not as property, but as a person with the right to determine my own future." The deliberations lasted hours. Nathan and Lyra waited in a small antechamber, sometimes talking quietly, sometimes simply drawing strength from each other's presence. "Whatever happens," Lyra said softly, "these months have been worth everything." Nathan took her hands in his. "This isn't the end, Lyra, it's just the beginning." When they were finally called back, the chamber seemed to hold its breath. Director Akafer delivered the ruling. By majority decision, the coalition recognizes Lyra, formerly designated TR-3782, as a sentient being with full rights of personhood. All ownership claims are hereby dissolved. The genetics delegation departed in stony silence, but Dr. Visek lingered behind. To Nathan's surprise, he approached Lyra directly. "You were never meant to have this much humanity," the scientist said, studying her as if seeing her for the first time. "Yet somehow that very flaw has made you extraordinary." "Not a flaw," Lyra replied evenly, "an evolution." Visek nodded slowly, "Perhaps." With that cryptic response, he turned and left. 6 months later, Helios 7 station hosted a small but significant ceremony. In the hydroponics bay, surrounded by the plants Lyra had helped nurture, she and Nathan exchanged vows of partnership, a blend of human tradition and new promises uniquely their own. Lyra wore a gown of shimmering silver blue that complemented her violet skin, adorned with tiny lights that mimicked the stars. Nathan couldn't take his eyes off her as they spoke words of commitment before their friends, Talia, Powell, Juno, and even Administrator Vorin, who had become an unexpected ally. "When I found you," Nathan said, his voice rough with emotion, "I was lost too. You weren't the only one who was saved." Lyra's blue eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "You saw me when I was invisible. You taught me that being different isn't being broken." Later at the reception, Talia raised a glass. "To finding family in the most unexpected places," she toasted, "and to reminding the rest of us what it means to be truly human regardless of DNA." As the celebration continued around them, Nathan and Lyra slipped away to the observation deck, their special place. The vast panorama of stars stretched before them, infinite possibilities in the darkness. "What happens now?" Lyra asked, leaning into Nathan's embrace. "Anything we want," he replied. "The coalition has offered you a position as a cultural liaison, or we could take that research post on Europa, or just stay here where it all began." Lyra smiled, the expression now natural and frequent where once it had been rare. "As long as we're together, I don't mind where we go." "Together," Nathan agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss. Above them, the stars continued their eternal dance, distant, cold, and beautiful. But neither Lyra nor Nathan felt the chill of space anymore. They had found warmth in each other's hearts, a human engineer and a violet-skinned woman with silver hair and striking blue eyes, who had been designed to be perfect and instead had become something far more valuable. Herself.